Sound check. Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nate Thompson with the Wellness Way, Yorkville. Happy Monday, guys. I hope you guys had a great weekend. So tonight, thank you guys so much for tuning in, for joining in. If you're watching it live right now, make sure that you go ahead and say hello. Let me know also where you're watching from. In addition to that, if you're watching the replay, just go ahead and type replay. Let me know where you're watching from as well. I'd love to see people from all over the world who tune in and watch these live broadcasts. Thank you guys so much for joining in. And tonight's topic is going to be interesting because I'm going to be answering the question, is there such thing as a perfect diet? Is there such thing as a perfect diet? And I talk about diet in the inflammation talk because, if you stood outside of Target and you ask people, hey, what's your diet like? I will pretty much guarantee that 90% of people would say, that's pretty good. My diet is pretty good. And most people, they don't want to say that it's perfect. Most people don't want to say that they eat just like, an absolute, what. But everybody wants to be in the exquisite middle, which means the cream of the crap, and the best of the worst of the best. They want to be just in the middle, and they just want to be pretty mediocre at everything. So, is there a perfect diet? I'm going to answer that question, okay, during this live broadcast. So again, if you're watching me, say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. It's always good to see so many people. Hi, Kathy. It's so good to see you. Kathy, who tunes in pretty much every week. She's just a long-time listener, awesome fan, wonderful person. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So let's answer that question. Is there a perfect diet? I think my answer is going to surprise you, especially. So guys, coming up, if you're from the Chicagoland area and you want to work with us individually, make sure that you get registered for our next inflammation event. Somebody asked, is this an in-person event? Yes, this is an in-person event. Tuesday, November 19th at 6:00 p.m. Guys, I can't believe how quickly November's coming because next week is Thanksgiving if you live here in the United States. But if you're from the Chicagoland area and you want to work with us directly to work on improving your life, whether it's issues with weight loss, issues with the immune system, with cancer, infertility, which is very interesting because this really has to do a lot with hormone metabolism and things that are really, really slamming the immune system. Also, mental stress is absolutely huge. Thyroid disease, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, problems with hormones. Guys, if you want answers and if you want solutions to that, that's going to be based off of you and your testing, please make sure that you get registered for that next event. All you have to do is just click on our link tree. You'll see it in the description of this video if you're watching from Facebook. But you also, if you go to any of our socials, you'll see our Linktree profile. If you click on that, all you have to do is just go to that. You'll see the inflammation event pop up first. You just click on that. That'll take you to Eventbrite. It takes you about 30 seconds to register yourself for that. And then a member of my staff, if you register, will reach out to you just to confirm that time. Please make sure that if you are registering, you are going to show up. And you're also, number two, going to show up on time because I like when people show up on time, especially. So get registered for that right now. Now, in addition to that, somebody even asked me this week, Dr. Nate, what's your thoughts on thermography? And you know what? I'm a huge fan of thermography. And in fact, we're going to be hosting thermography in our office through Illinois Thermography and Cindy Schroba, wonderful person, wonderful woman. She's going to be coming into the office on Thursday, December 12th. During our normal office hours. And so if you want to get thermography, make sure that you just go ahead and stop this video, pause this video. and you'll see her number. So you don't contact us for thermography. You contact her. She will schedule you for that at 815-482-6224. Get registered for that. I know that she also is at many locations in the Chicagoland area. So if you can't come to our office, then please, by all means, schedule at another location. But if you contact her, or if you actually look up Illinois Thermography on her website or Illinois Thermography on her socials, you'll be able to know where she's going to be at next. But she'll be in our office Thursday, December 12th for thermography. And we're specifically talking about breast thermography. Why breast thermography? Well, because people ask me, well, should I get a mammogram? I'm like, I can't really tell you what to get or what not to get, but I will tell you this. Especially, just remember this, even the best technology can only find disease when it's already there. And when you're talking about cancer, you don't want to wait until it's already there before you decide to do something about it. And the reason why I like thermography, or I even like Dutch testing or immune testing and things like that, is it will show problems and changes in physiology even before they start and it becomes quote unquote pathological. And it just comes down to this. When would you want to find cancer? When it's at 4 cells, 8 cells, 16 cells? Or do you want to wait until it's a mass large enough to show up on a mammogram? The reason why I like thermography so much is because it starts to see changes in physiology within the breast tissue so that you can start doing something about it before, in fact, it turns into breast cancer. Okay. So make sure that you contact her, 815-482-6224, if you want to get that scheduled in our office. But you can also contact her if you're not within our area, because she may be at other areas, and you can get scheduled for that as well. So this is why I'm a huge fan of breast thermography, especially. Okay. So let's answer this question. Is there a perfect, quote unquote, perfect diet? Okay. Now, one of the things that I'm going to say is I'm going to say this. I have put people on a number of food plans, but how I have them eat is really based on testing. And honestly, I couldn't care about what the name of it is. So have I put them on a Paleolithic type diet? Yes. Have I put them on a ketogenic type diet? Yes, I have. Have I put them on a carnivore type diet? Yes. Have I put them on a plant-based diet? Yes. I couldn't care less about what the name has on it, because I know that people just love the names because they love the bright, shiny object. And then they, get bored of that, and then they move on to the next fad diet. And so this is why everything that I'm going to talk about is going to be based on testing. And I really, really don't care what the name of it actually is. So is there a perfect diet? Well, I think one of the things is, if we start eating this way, then one of the things that can help you to avoid is needing my help, getting backed into a corner, and desperately needing my help. And I'm going to talk about why people change here in just a second. And I'm going to show you when I would rather see you, especially. So is there something general that you can actually look at? The answer is yes, absolutely. So generally speaking, which isn't going to be true for everybody, watch, because I'm going to explain this in just a second. Eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and absolutely no added sugar. And keep your intake to support exercise, but not body fat. Now, here's the thing. If you need to work out 5-6 times a week and just absolutely slam yourself in order to keep your weight down, then chances are your diet is absolutely horrendous. And I experienced this firsthand, being a college athlete and having to have, season-ending surgery, gaining 30 pounds in 2.5 months because I ate like an absolute idiot. And so, but you shouldn't have to exercise in order to earn your dessert or something like that. So think of this. If you eat meats and veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no added sugar, then chances are you probably don't have to calorie count. You don't have to count your calories. You don't have to do that. It's very hard to overeat when you're keeping it to that, especially. Okay. The things that you're going to overeat are going to be the ultra processed foods that are very sugar dense, calorie dense, takes up a small amount of volume within your stomach. And then you have things like broccoli that takes up a huge amount of volume within your stomach, but they're not adding extra calories. In fact, they are primarily carbohydrates with a little bit of protein, but they're carbohydrates that aren't easily broken down. They're not broken down very quickly. So eat meats and veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no added sugar. Keep your intake to support exercise, but not necessarily body fat. Now, The reason why I put this up for a lot of you who may not be following very long, and I don't mention this all that much, but I talk about this in my book Transformation 28. Yes, you can get it on Amazon, but I'm going to say this disclaimer. Please don't buy it. Please don't buy it. Yes, you can order it on Amazon. Yes, we've had a lot of people who have ordered it, but the reason why is this. I remember I took a whole entire year developing this book, editing the book, setting up tons of websites and things like that. And as soon as I did that, I became a Wellness Way doctor. And I looked at the book and I said, you know what? I don't want people to get the book because it's not going to apply to everyone. And I talked about the whole eat meats and veggies, nuts and seeds concept, in the book. Do I think that you'll get value from it from ordering the book? Yes, probably. There's some good exercise tips and things like that. However, it's not necessarily going to apply to everyone. And this is why I don't like a lot of nutrition books. And it's why a lot of books, because they're just not going to apply to everyone. They're not going to be individualized to everyone. So yes, I have a book, but no, I'm asking you, please don't get it. Okay. Please don't get it. So when I talk about the generally speaking, eat meats and veggies, nuts and seeds, a little bit of fruit, no added sugar, some starch. There's more to this that I want to talk to you about because there are other factors that play a role in what types of meats and what types of veggies, things like that. I'm going to show you a clinical example here in just a second. So what are some of the other factors that are going to play a role? Well, stomach acid, bile, pancreatic enzymes, all are going to play a role in how well you break down foods, how well you break down fats, emulsify fats, transport them across the gastrointestinal barrier. Guys, all of this is going to play a role because stomach acid is absolutely huge. Stomach acid is responsible for sterilizing your food. Stomach acid is responsible for helping you to start tear apart your proteins to break them down to smaller components, amino acids. Stomach acid plays a huge role with the absorption of iron, absorption of certain like B vitamins and things like that. And most of the time, people are running usually very, very low in stomach acid, which is going to play a role in a lot of other things that are going on. If you don't have a gallbladder, for example, you may have a lot of problems being able to break down your fats and be able to absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K because you need bile in order for that to happen. But you can't concentrate the bile. And this is why people who have their gallbladder out, I was just talking to someone earlier today. She's like, oh, both my grandmothers don't have their gallbladder. I'm like, tell me how they're doing. And she's like, they're doing awful because bile plays a huge role. If you have enough stomach acid, if you have enough bile, that tends to create a better environment for your microbiome. And a lot of people, when I see they don't have a gallbladder, oh my goodness, I see just massive overgrowth and infection and things like that. Or people who are taking a proton pump inhibitor, a PPI, in which they say you got to lower down your stomach acid. A lot of times, guys, what you'll see is they'll develop a lot of infection within the gastrointestinal system because they're not sterilizing their food. But this is why they also have problems with hip fractures and things like that because you need stomach acid to be able to absorb calcium. So it's all dependent on stomach acid, bile, and also pancreatic enzymes too, to help you break down carbs, fats, things like that. If you ever heard, of people who have exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, which now they have all these drugs for, which is basically just a pancreatic enzyme. But these people have tons of problems with things like bloating, with gas, with loose stool, things like that, because they can't break down their foods the way they're supposed to. The immune system recognizes that and says, send it down. This is not something that I necessarily want. So this is why you need good stomach acid. You need good bile salts to be able to break down some fats, to be able to absorb some of your fat-soluble vitamins. And then you also need a sufficient amount of pancreatic enzymes, which tend to be very low when you're undergoing a lot of stress. That can be mental, that can be chemical, and physical. It's what we talk about at the inflammation event. Or if you've had your gallbladder out, then it's a whole nother ballgame. You need to be on a bile acid replacement every time that you eat food because you just don't have enough bile and you can't store it. So you're not going to have enough when you eat a high fat meal, especially. So all those three things, are huge factors when it comes to what's the best diet that's going to be for you. Number two, you have to take into account the integrity of your barriers. Now, if you look at your barriers, guys, your body is miraculous. It's amazing. This is why I'm just like, yeah, we crawled out of some kind of pool of amino acids that got struck by lightning, and voila, here we are. And then over millions of years, we just evolved miraculously. And people actually talk about that a lot. And I'm like, if you look at the design of the body is so miraculously designed. But look at your barrier integrity. So if you look at your barriers are what's separating the internal versus the external environment. And the body does this because it wants to keep bacteria and viruses within the external environment, which is why in your gastrointestinal system, you have a barrier. It's only one cell layer thick, okay? You have barrier known as your skin, which is several layers thick. You have a barrier in your urinary tract. You have a barrier in your lungs. All of that is separating between internal and external environment, and it helps the body keep out pathogens. However, if you look at your barriers, you have a lot of immune cells that sit at the barriers because the body wants to fight the battle at the castle wall. It doesn't want to wait until it's overrun within the body. And that's why barrier integrity is so good, so important. This is why if you look at things like leaky gut, people say, oh, I have a leaky gut. I'm like, well, there really isn't any one test that says you have leaky gut, but there are a lot of tests that can show how your barriers are actually functioning. And if the barrier starts to go, you're going to run, especially in the gastrointestinal system, you're going to run into a lot of problems. You're also going to run into a lot of problems with chronic inflammation and things like that. And then you also have to consider infection. This is why you can look at some of the microbial load, on a stool test and see if you are you're getting a lot of pathogenic bacteria that are growing. This is why also you can see if you have a high amount of yeast. And yes, yeast is actually normal flora within the gastrointestinal system. But if you start to become immunocompromised, you start running really, really low in stomach acid, or if you have a chronic infection due to mold or mycotoxicity, all these things can make these things tend to run out of control. And guess what? Doctors aren't going to give you any answer about that, but that means that you need to eat in a very, very specific way, based off of testing. I'm going to show you a clinical example. And here's a person who came in with Crohn's disease, inflammation everywhere, chronic pain in every single joint, inside of her body. She was also on steroid medications in order to try to cut the tongue out of the immune system so the immune system wouldn't respond. And yes, that does lower inflammation, but it doesn't do it based on a way that you want to manipulate. You don't want to manipulate the immune system in that way, because the only thing that happens over time is by manipulating that immune system and keep creating that damage. Then the only thing that you're going to do is it's just setting you up for cancer later on in life. Who says so? They do. So when we tested her, you can see that she had 29 different IgG food allergies. That's why when we look at food allergies, you look at IgG and you look at IgE. IgE is like Johnny's got a peanut allergy and breaks down an anaphylaxis and hives every time he eats pizza. He's going to carry around peanuts. He's got to carry around an EpiPen. But what a lot of times they don't test for is they don't test for the other immune system response. Why don't they test for it? Because they don't like the reaction, but it's still an inflammatory reaction. And she had 29 different IgG food allergies. 29. That's a lot. Now, if you look at this, does she have some leaky gut? Absolutely. I'm going to show you the stool test in just a second. But I want you to think of this. If I said eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, it probably wouldn't work out that well for her. And the reason why is because you can see she's got an allergy to blueberry. You can see that she's got an allergy to cranberries, allergies to grapes. And she said, well, I'm just going to eat a bunch of kale. You can see she's got an allergy to that, allergy to citrus fruit like lemon, mangoes, honeydew melon, even green peppers, pineapples. So you can see that she has an allergy to a lot of fruits, and she even has an allergy to some vegetables as well. So this is why you have to start narrowing it down and get a little bit more detailed when it comes to testing, especially. I remember she looked at this and she was just beside herself. She's like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to eat? And at that point, I made it very easy for her. And I said, well, look at this. If you look at all of this testing, you know what I noticed you don't have any kind of allergy to meat. So you should probably do a primarily carnivore diet, which means, that you can eat on here things like chicken eggs. You can actually have chicken. You can have beef. You can have liver. You can have actually bacon, And at that point, that's primarily what should be eating in order to help lower down an inflammatory process so that it just stop tearing open her barriers and causing a lot of barrier damage, especially. So that's why if I would have said, well, generally speaking, you should eat this, well, it may have helped her, but it's not going to help her get over the edge, especially because even when you look at the stool testing and looking at her poop as it travels from the north end of the digestive system all the way to elimination to the south end of the digestive system, one of the things that you can see, she's carrying a high amount of pathogenic bacteria. And you can also see she's got a parasite that's going on. Now, I know everybody on social media says, oh, I have a parasite, I have a parasite. I'm like, well, sometimes we'll measure and we'll see a parasite, but usually you know what it is? It's a microscopic parasite. And usually the problem is this can chronically irritate the immune system. It's a constant inflammatory trigger. But one of the reasons why you actually get a parasite is because you don't adequately sterilize your food very well. And that has to do with being chronically low in stomach acid. So you can see that she's carrying infection that's going on, different forms of infection. But one of the biggest things that I will tell you is just by eating, just an eating plan isn't going to help to correct this. She needs to be on very specific things in order to help create an environment that's not going to propagate additional bacteria or any kind of yeast infection, or to help her rid a parasite, especially. So I'm not going to say specifically what we had her go on because it's very specific to her testing. And I could say, oh yeah, high dose oregano probably would help, and everybody's going to run out and start taking oregano without any kind of testing. And that's why I say, please don't do that. Okay. Please don't do that. So this is why if you look at her, then what I recommended for her, and as far as how she should be eating, is very specific to just these two kinds of tests as well. But even if you go a little bit further, this is not this individual, but this is an individual who came to me, and she was having a lot of problems with a lot of nasal. She would get like very stuffy in her sinuses. She would get a lot of postnasal drip, things like that. And I looked at her history, and then I looked at some of her labs, and I asked her this question: hey, in your house, are you in the presence of any kind of water damage mold? And she said, I knew you were going to ask that question. Yes, there is water damage mold in my house. So you know what we had her do? We had her do a dust test to test it in her house, and it was through the roof. Oh my goodness. There's so much mold. We're talking about 1,000 times more than what would be acceptable in her house. And then we measured for it in the body, and you can see that she's carrying a very high amount of water damage mold mycotoxicity that's known as ochratoxin, or OTA. Okay. So this even changes how she should eat as well. And the reason why I say that is because people who have mold toxicity, they don't do very well with citric acid, foods that contain citric acid or drinks that contain citric acid. And also they should be avoiding any kind of mycotoxic exposure through their food. And this will be things like coffee, because coffee can also contain a high amount of mycotoxins. Certain types of dairy can do it. Certain types of meat can contain high amounts of mycotoxins. And that's why if you've seen on social media, they're like, oh, this is why I do mushroom coffee and I don't do any kind of like coffee as well, because coffee can contain a high amount of mycotoxins. But here's the thing. Most of the people's exposure when they're really getting slammed with mycotoxins really has to do more with the inhalation of it than it is the getting it through the digestive system as well. So this person's challenge really has to do with getting out of the environment and then helping to bind and eliminate that. But the reason why, guys, this is so important is if you look at just this one type of mycotoxin, look at what it affects. It affects the nerve system. Okay. It's a chronic immune system trigger. It can actually damage the cells. Okay. It's a lot of oxidative stress. It can actually cause immunosuppression. And in fact, by the time that we saw her immune system response, she was already low in certain cells, which means she's really been handling this for a long period of time. It can also damage the liver, which can then affect your hormone function. And in fact, she even asked, she's like, should I get my hormones tested? I'm like, no, not right now, because it's going to be off, because your liver has to be able to metabolize these toxins The biggest thing that I want you to do is get out of the environment. So stop trying to bail out your boat if you keep filling it with water, especially. So this is also carcinogenic. This can also really damage the kidneys long term, can damage the gastrointestinal system long term, which is why we put people on binders, things like either activated charcoal, probiotics, and it's all different from the type of mold that they might have. But it also can cause problems with fertility. And a lot of what it does is because of how it affects the liver and how it affects hormone metabolism, especially. And this isn't going to get corrected just by eating differently or eating some kind of carnivore diet or something like that. You need to specifically help her to clear those out and bind those out so it doesn't cause more issues as she eliminates it from the gastrointestinal system, especially. So is there a perfect diet? I would say this. One of the things you need to do is you need to get tested. You really need to work with a Wellness Way doctor. I know people reach out to me, and I'm not currently doing any kind of remote consults or something like that, but you can go to thewellnessway.com. You can reach out to corporate and you can say, I need someone to find me someone, please, to work with me remotely. And they'll pair you with a doctor, either that might be close to you or someone who can get on the phone with you, call you, order the test, and get you set up for all of that. But get tested, guys, because the easiest way from point A to point B is a straight line. A lot of people have been on this journey for years and they just have no idea. And they take 1,000 different detours during that time. The easiest way to do is to start investing in testing, work with the Wellness Way doctor who can get you there the fastest. Number 2, reduce stressors. Reduce stressors. And I'm not just talking about mental stress. I'm talking about anything that stresses out the body, and which is why we talk about physical, mental, chemical. All of those can lead to chronic inflammation that you don't feel. But women will feel it a lot sooner than men because if you're cycling, you'll start to see changes in your hormone cycle, which is why typically women will do something before men. Women are a lot more in tune with their health than men are. Men just feel lousy and then they just suffer a heart attack and just die. So physical, mental, chemical, those are all sources of inflammation. You got to know where they're actually coming from. And the third thing that I will say is this: the body is self-healing. This is why we get clinical results, because the body is way smarter than I am. The body is self-healing and it's always trying to adapt. Your body, think of this, your body will always try to adapt until it can't. Your body is always trying to adapt until it can't, until the stressors are too much and it can no longer adapt. And then what happens is you go into a dis-ease process. What do you mean dis-ease? Did you spell that wrong? No, it's dis-ease. It's a lack of ease. It's the inability of the body to adapt to its environment. And so now it starts to adapt into something that doctors would test for, call it a disease, and throw you on a medication for the rest of your life without ever getting to the multiple causes that could be the reason why you're not actually feeling very well. So the body is amazing. The body is smart. That's why when we look at testing, we look at it, take a step back and say, how's the body trying to adapt to this? What are the stressors that we can try to remove and eliminate so that we remove enough stressors, we empty out the bucket enough so that the body can start to recover, repair, and start to heal. So is there a perfect diet? The answer is yes. There is a perfect diet, but it's going to be one that is based on your testing. This is why when people say, I went on a carnivore diet and it was amazing. And I'm like, well, sometimes a blind squirrel can find a nut. Some people go on it and they feel worse. And there's a reason why. That's why testing is going to be so important. So this is why when I generally say eat meats and veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no added sugar, keep your intake to support exercise and not body fat. Yes, that may work for some people, but the problem is, just like I said in the book, Transformation 28, is that it's not going to work for everybody. Guys, this is why I know that testing is so important. Just remember this, just because it worked for you doesn't mean it works for everyone else. And in fact, that's one of the things that I realized, in the book, is that it worked a miracle in my life. In fact, down 45, 50 pounds over the course of about 90 days. And I mean, it absolutely changed and transformed me. But then one of the things I noticed is it stopped working. And I wanted to know why. Well, one of the reasons why is because I developed terrible allergies to the food that I was consuming more often, which was a lot of nuts, which was a lot of eggs, which was a lot of whey protein and things like that. And in fact, it got to the point where I just didn't feel very good. And I knew, this is where I realized testing is so important. And no, I'm not going to recommend that everybody do this because it worked for me. So that's why I say, please don't buy the book. Just because it worked for you doesn't mean that's going to work for everyone else. And this is why you can generally speak about some things, but it isn't necessarily going to work for everybody. And I also will make something too, because people ask me a lot about weight training. And yes, generally speaking, should you be weight training? The answer is yes, 100%. And I think this would be better. You can make a more general statement than on nutrition. But I really think that everybody should be weight training. And yes, especially guys, if you're getting older, you should be weight training. And in fact, we'll have people, they'll make a miraculous recovery. And I say, you know what you need to be doing now? You need to be weight training. And then 3 months later, they're still hemming and hawing on what they should do. And I said, I'll tell you exactly what to do. Go into a gym and have them teach you how to do it. This is why when you talk about weight training, you don't have to bodybuild. You don't have to do bicep curls. You don't have to do all these weird, things on fancy equipment. And in fact, we're building a home gym in our house. And you know what's going to be in our home gym? A squat rack and a pull-up bar. And that's about it, because you can literally do so many different things just by doing this. So weight training in general, here's some of the most important movements they should be doing. I think everybody should be deadlifting. And in fact, I think that you should set a goal of deadlifting 1.5 times your body weight, which means if you weigh 200 pounds, you should be able to deadlift 300 pounds. I think that you should be squat easily your body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you should be able to back squat 200 pounds, and you should be able to strict press over your head about 3/4 of your body weight. Now, a lot of times when people go in, they can't do that, but that should be your goal to work towards, is 1.5 times your body weight. You should be able to squat your body weight, press 3/4 of your body weight, be able to strict press those things. And if you can't do it, then start working on doing it, because one of the biggest issues that people have is loss of strength, loss of muscle mass. The more muscle mass that you lose, the more you're going to have problems with blood sugar control and things like that. You should be working towards building muscle your whole life. In fact, last night, Sunday, didn't want to go and went anyway. And what did I do? I squatted and I did pull-ups, squatting and pull-ups, multi-joint compound movements in order to help with muscle mass. When people say, oh, well, how do you build muscle? Compound movements and compound movements that require more than one just joint. Deadlifting, squatting, and pressing are some of the most beneficial things in order to put on muscle mass, because they require a lot of different muscles in order for that to happen. Okay. So the best diet for you, here's the thing with the best diet, is that the best diet for you should not cause an immune system reaction. This is why testing for different types of food allergies can be so important. It should help you feel energized and not tired. And in fact, one of the things that you're going to notice is someone that's carrying a lot of food allergies, they'll eat a lot of them and it will fatigue them quite a bit. They'll experience a lot of joint pain, brain fog, and things like that. So the best diet for you will help you feel energized, not tired. And the best diet for you is going to feed the body the required macro and micronutrients. Macronutrients being fat, carbohydrates, protein, and micronutrients, things like iron, selenium, zinc, your B vitamins, things like that. But guys, a lot of that is based off of absorption. Okay. It's based off of absorption, like stomach acid, bile acids, digestive enzymes, things like that. And so you could eat a lot of those things until the cows come home. If you get a problem with those things, then you're going to end up very deficient in those things. But the best diet for you is going to be based off of testing. And this is your roadmap. This is how you get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. You know, the people who never want to look at directions, they pull something out, they got to put something together, delivered on Amazon. They don't want to look at the directions because their ego says, I can do this on my own. I can put all of this stuff together just by looking at it. And then 9 hours later, finally they say, I think I'm going to look at the directions. So guys, the testing is the roadmap to help you get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. So how do you take care of you? How do you take care of you? Remember, you got one life, you got one body to live in. You need to take excellent care of it. And this is why stress, structural, and immune. I talk about this at the inflammation talk, mental, physical, and chemical, all those different things. So when you look at mental stress, guys, most of the things that people deal with have to do with mental stress or a consequence of mental stress, like poor sleep, poor digestion, things like that. And then you have to take care of structural issues. And the reason why I'm so big on structural issues, the people get the best clinical results are the people who are seeing me in person addressing structural issues in the office, because structural issues, because of the relationship to the brain and to the spinal cord, to the nerve system, play a huge role in the body's ability to be able to recover from stress. But then the other thing is too, is you got to get rid of things that are constantly stressing out the immune system, which have to do a lot with things that are involving the digestive system, especially because remember, it's a barrier and that can affect the immune system big time, as can mold and mycotoxins and things like that. Okay. This is why, guys, if you're from the Chicagoland area, why I really, really want you to please make sure you get to the inflammation event coming up Tuesday, November 19th. This is tomorrow at 6:00 p.m. If you've been on the fence, here's your chance to register for right now. So I want you to go just click the link tree, and you'll see that this will pop up first, and then click on that link, get registered for it. We start promptly at 6:00. A member of my staff will reach out to you tomorrow to confirm your attendance at that event. And in fact, we also have a gift for you at that event. Those people who have been to that inflammation event, you know what they say? Wow. Oh, I never looked at it that way. And the story that you tell at the end is absolutely amazing. It's awesome. And it inspired me. Okay. So make sure you get registered for that. Here's my final thought. People say, well, what causes people to change? Do I have faith that people can change? Yes. But it's under circumstances that I don't necessarily like. So here's why people change. They either change from inspiration or they're going to change from desperation. It's either through inspiration or it's through desperation. And of course, it doesn't matter what's going to get a person to change, but I don't like taking care of a person who is so desperate that they're willing to do anything. I don't want to take care of you because you're desperate. I want to take care of you because you're inspired. One of the reasons why I changed my life so dramatically wasn't because of desperation. It was because of inspiration. I was inspired. I was committing to, and that's why when you come into the holiday season, you know, people are like, oh, I have to put this on hold now because it's the holiday season. I said, no one's forcing you to eat, because it's my habits that dictate my behavior. It's my priorities that dictate my behavior, not other people's priorities. It's my habits and it's my priorities. But you need to develop that through inspiration. I want you to develop the right habits through inspiration and not from desperation. And unfortunately, most people, they walk into a medical doctor's office and they're desperate because they have no answers and no hope. And you know what the biggest thing is that I tell people, because I see people who get sick and they end up coming to me because they get sick, they go to the doctor, they give them no answers whatsoever. No answers. I'm like, if you want to be so absolutely disappointed with our healthcare system, get chronically ill. And you'll realize they don't have an answer for you unless it's just some random advice, meaning you need to not eat so much saturated fat and need to take these medications for the rest of your life. And you're going to realize the emperor has no clothes. They have no answer for you. And that's why I don't want you to move out of desperation. I want you to be inspired so that you decide to do something based on inspiration and not necessarily desperation. That's why I want you to get to the inflammation talk before it's too late. So is there a perfect diet? Yes, I believe that there is a perfect diet, but it's going to be different for every different person. And it's going to be different for you. And it's going to be different probably for the person that you're sitting next to. So it's all based on testing, which is why I think testing is going to be so important for so many different people. So make sure, guys, that you please get registered for that inflammation talk so that you understand what the approach is and how you actually do that. And then on top of that too, is that if you don't work with the Wellness Way doctor, please make sure that you work with the Wellness Way doctor either in your area or work with them remotely. If you're from the Chicagoland area, we'd be happy and honored to be able to take care of you. But is there a perfect diet? Well, if you're not testing, then you're just a blind squirrel trying to find a nut. And I want you to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible so that you can start enjoying a happy and healthy life, especially. So guys, I appreciate you guys joining me on this live broadcast. Do me a favor. If you enjoyed this, please make sure that you subscribe. Please make sure too that you share this video with other people. And if you're from the Chicagoland area, please make sure that you get registered for the inflammation talk and give me a topic for next week. I have no idea what I'm going to be talking about, but I'll consider any suggestions that you might have. So guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you. And I hope you have a healthy and happy holiday season. I will see you guys next week for another live broadcast. Be well, be blessed. And as I always say, remember who you are.